Real glitch in the Matrix stories. Do we live in simulation universe? Redditor 51. Even if there was a glitch in the system, you wouldn't notice it. To notice a glitch you'd have to exist outside of the system. It'd be like expecting the NPCs in Skyrim to be suddenly confused that the dragons were Macho Man Randy Savage when you install a mod. Also, you can't prove or disprove the theory we're in a simulation. The odds of us being in the simulation are the same odds as me being a floating brain in a vacuum, hallucinating all this. Though if that were the case, I feel like I'd rather be rich, successful, and extraordinarily handsome. Also maybe some magic, or superpowers too. Redditor 52, always thought it was weird we haven't found one shred of evidence of any life outside our planet. Not one bacteria, not one radio wave. That's either a simulation or creationism. Redditor 53, one time, I made myself some brownies. I ate 2 over the course of a day, and when I went back to the tray the next day it was only missing 1. I experienced déjà vu very consistently, and it can be triggered by the same event happening a second time. I woke up one morning and it was dark outside. I stared at my window for a second and it suddenly became bright, as if someone took the light slider and set it to max. This was accompanied by a strange moan, screech, roar. I made my phone charge up from 14 to 56 somehow. I was playing a game with my friend and the time went from 1 a.m. to 11 p.m. And everything from that 2-hour time happened again, almost like I saw the future. Redditor 54, I am not into religion, the supernatural or paranormal. But you knew there would be a but, didn't you? Several years ago, I was driving along a road, on a weekend afternoon, not tired, not sleepy. I don't do drugs and never have done and don't drink or smoke. It was the A13 in Essex, UK, a multi-lane highway. I went over a flyover over the Tilbury Docks turnoff. Carried on driving another 5 kilometers, went over the flyover over the M25 and found myself back 5 kilometers having just crossed the Tilbury Docks turnoff behind the same car. I have told this story multiple times and suggestions have included second-hand smoke from drug user, unlikely as I had just come from my parents' house. Carbon monoxide from the exhaust. Had the same car for years, never had a problem. Before or after micro sleep, I never experienced that before or after, and it was mid-late afternoon. I wasn't tired. I was shocked by the experience, too shocked to think about checking the time or distance on the car, or changing my driving pattern. The only other car I was paying attention to in front of me was the same one for both iterations of the journey. I can't prove anything, and I don't care if people believe me. It happened and I can't think of a reasonable explanation. A glitch in the Matrix is as good an explanation as anything else. Redditor 55, my dad reads a lot and has quite a lot of books. He once had a dream where he went to a second-hand bookstore and found a pretty rare signed book for relatively cheap. I can't recall what book it was. So the next day he hopped on his motorcycle and drove to that same bookstore where he indeed found the book at the exact spot as in his dream. Redditor 56, I once had major déjà vu that allowed me to predict what my friend was about to say and show me on his phone. I literally told him what he was about to show me before I saw it, and I was right. Redditor 57, I used to have a metal guitar pick. I dropped it, it bounced somewhere and absolutely could not find it. I was cleaning out my closet and found a pair of jeans I hadn't worn in 5 years and discovered the pick in my pocket. Like why? Redditor 58, I was out walking home from school, and it was dark outside. I live in Norway, and it gets dark here very early when it's autumn-winter. Suddenly I felt a kind of vibration in the air. So I looked up and the moon came crashing down. Or, it was more like it expanded, came closer in a weird motion. I don't really know how to explain it. It didn't move smoothly. It was like it had a low FPS, coming closer 1 frame at the time. It stopped right over my head, and I fell to the ground. I really thought that I would be crushed. It disappeared in the same motion as it came down. I was still sitting on the ground when some of my classmates found me. To this day I have no idea what happened. It was most likely some psychological thing, but it felt so real. Redditor 59, when I was a teenager I was standing at the top of the stairs in my house and dropped a set of car keys, which fell into a laundry basket at the bottom of the stairs as seen by myself and my parents, both of whom I was talking to. Went down to grab the keys and they weren't in the laundry. they weren't around the basket either. My parents were both standing directly next to the basket they fell into. There wasn't any sort of AC vent or something they could have magically bounced into or something. They simply vanished from all existence. They haven't been seen to this day over a decade later. Redditor 60, once I went to school, stepped out of the front door. The next moment I was inside the elevator. All the process, walking to the elevator, pressing the button, the elevator door opening, pressing the button for first floor, I don't remember it at all. It was so creepy. Redditor 61, obligatory warning, I am on mobile. I was holding my cousin 1F while I was babysitting at my aunt's house. She started fussing and crying, so I went to get her sippy cup, which was sitting on the edge of the table. In her fit, she kicked the sippy cup off the table and I heard it hit the ground somewhere nearby. I sat my cousin down and told her to go play while I picked up her sippy and washed it off. I couldn't bend down with her in my arms, and after she left I bent down to get the cup. I couldn't find it anywhere along the ground, and I searched all along the floor on my hands and knees to find it. When I stood back up, it was sitting back on the table, in the exact same spot and position it had been in when my cousin had kicked it. I was freaked out, to say the least. Redditor 62, I went camping a few weeks ago and was packing up the little Swift trailer, and I specifically remember thinking that my new sleeping bag was so small, it might get lost in everyone's stuff. So I distinctly remember seeing the clip on it, seeing a place to attach it to the trailer cabinet, and clipping it. Then when we got to the campsite, I couldn't find my sleeping bag anywhere. Ended up wearing multiple layers, and my friends donated some blankets but froze my butt off. When we got back home, my sleeping bag was still in the back seat of my car in my driveway with that damn clip that I swear I didn't even notice until I used it. Now I don't trust my own mind. Redditor 63, it's pretty small, but pretty confusing. I live alone and, during quarantine, tend to not have many visitors. The other day, it had rained, brief shower, maybe only 20-30 minutes. After it had cleared up, I figured I'd go for a walk just to get out of the house and take in the sweet smell of petrichor. When I looked down at my doormat, the ground immediately to its left was completely dry, in the shape of my doormat. The ground under my doormat was wet. The mat was in its usual place directly in front of my door, and had been there all day to my knowledge. I don't know who would have adjusted it or why. Redditor 64, a friend and I were driving to another friend's house and I was giving directions while he drove. It was daytime, perfect weather, and he was driving about 20 miles per hour because we knew our turn was close. When I saw the street, I told my friend to turn, and we instantly found ourselves hitting the curb about 100 feet past the turn. The car was perpendicular to curb, as if he intentionally turned right here. Fortunately, we weren't moving too fast, so the car stopped when it hit the curb. He looked at me with a confused expression and said, "What just happened?" I was just as confused, and we sat there a couple minutes in silence. Then he backed up, turned around and went on to the friend's house. We never spoke a word of this after it happened. Redditor 65, I've been all out there. Heaven, hell, I saw God as a huge machine elf, I saw numbers glitching in reality, I saw the devil in human form, not extremely evil or something, it's a lot like chess. Also, one time I was little, my parents were fighting and there was a storm. Then lightning hit the house. Everything turned off except for the TV. Redditor 66, when I was stationed in Germany, a girl I was trying to date turned out to be related to my best friend from high school in Florida. Redditor 67, I can predict people's actions way too accurately just by relying on gut instinct. It just creeps me out when that happens, but it's useful nonetheless. Redditor 68, I don't have any, but I enjoy reading, thinking about this type of thing. I am drawn to the idea that there is something utterly fundamental about our existence that completely escapes our awareness. Perhaps it's not anything like a simulation, but some other arrangement that we cannot even conceive of. Redditor 69, one time I took a fresh slice of bread out the bag and took one bite. I looked down and there were 2 bite marks. Nothing has made sense since. Redditor 70, I'm pretty sure he just says shit to keep himself relevant. Redditor 71, several times I should have been in a car accident, but somehow my car just couldn't do it. One time, specifically, I should have hit a guardrail and it felt like something corrected the wheel for me and kept my car from hitting it. The weather was fine that day. Like my hands were on the wheel and I could feel it jerk the other way just enough to keep me from crashing. Other times I would consciously try and change lanes on the interstate, but it was like I couldn't. Like my body and my car were frozen in the lane. A few seconds would pass and a car would go driving by me. Had I tried to change lanes, I would have hit these passing cars. It was like something kept me from veering and hitting them. It's as if I can't have these accidents because I'm not programmed to. I'm very grateful though. Redditor 72, I haven't noticed anything. I am a pretty observant guy and I pay a 10-11 to my surroundings. Honestly, people who think this way just sound delusional to me. If we really were in a simulation, don't you think the SIG 0010 would be obvious? Just a load of delusional claptrap for people who 0101 without really considering that 1001 doesn't work in the end. What a pointless point of view. 0101 agreed because the signs are everywhere. I have seen people change their view on a dim as if they had just had a new view programmed into them on the spot. How do you explain that other than us being in a simulation? Keep looking, the truth is out there. Redditor 73, what is his basis for this belief? What exactly are the odds? How did he calculate these odds? Honestly, this sounds like nonsense. And in any case it conveniently can't be either proven or disproven, like the existence of God. The burden of proof is on one who would make a claim about the truth. If Neil deGrasse Tyson is going to make an absurd claim, he needs to provide proof to support his hypothesis. Redditor 74, working night security in an office tower. I had a tenant I see regularly come to his office one night. I watched him on the camera as he came into the garage elevator, then arrived at the ground floor and came out into the front lobby and walked past me and said hi and headed into the main elevator and went to his office on the 12th floor. About 10 seconds later, the same guy with the same clothes came into the garage elevator and then exited the garage elevator and entered the lobby, walked past me and said hi and went into the main elevator to his office on the same floor like an instant replay. There is only one way in or out and it was impossible for this to happen in any normal way. You might think I was imagining this, but my partner was right next to me and said, "What the fuck?" We looked at each other and at the time said it must be a glitch in the Matrix. We have never been able to explain what we saw except for it must really be a glitch and this is the Matrix. Redditor 75, Tinkerbell's malfunctioning wand, the Berenstain Bears. Redditor 76, one day I got up to find a bat hanging in my kitchen. I throw a towel at it and pick up the towel with the bat inside and go outside and shake it out into the yard. I watched it flop into the grass and figured a cat would get it. Lived on a farm with lots of outdoor cats. I went to work. Fast forward to me coming home and my brother stopped in to chat. I told him about the bat. He nonchalantly asks, "Is that it?" while pointing to the rug by the door. Sure enough, there is a dead bat just lying on the rug that I somehow didn't notice until then. But that can't be the same one. There's no way a dead bat was there when I put my shoes on in the morning. Nobody was in the house all day that I know of. How in the what? Redditor 77, just had a dream on Friday night that my best friend was upset that I didn't tell her that her wedding was cancelled. Saturday afternoon she shows up at my house to ask if she can stay with us because her engagement is over. Redditor 78, a genuine feeling that when I call things out into the universe, or communicate something I wholeheartedly believe is possible to a friend, it happens every time. Good or bad? I guess it's the law of attraction. But a simulation would neatly explain that. Redditor 79, NGT just rambles on using big words and puts others down to make himself seem smarter than he really is. Dude is just a dick. Redditor 80, I live in constant fear of getting stuck in the falling animation. Redditor 81, I'm pretty sure that if I feel something will happen it will. It's hard to describe. However, I have been able to predict improbable events occurring that would have been impossible to predict. Granted, I think my uncertainty about said event made it happen. Or maybe I was uncertain because I knew it would happen. Anyway, I'm pretty sure I can alter the future. However, half the time it makes my future worse and I suck at controlling it. Redditor 82, the only glitch I can see is people still listen to that sellout hack. Redditor 83, me and my mom and little brother went to some store to buy something, like Michael's or something like that. The store wasn't for kids and we were pretty bored. To make it up to us, my mom said she'd buy us one thing each. I got candy and my brother got some kind of toy. On the way home he kept trying to get me to open my candy and I wouldn't because I knew I'd have to share it, but I wasn't having that. I was adamant I was gonna take it to school and eat at recess so it'd be all mine. I hid the box while my brother wasn't looking inside of a Halloween costume in the closet on the shelf. At some point before bed he went for a bath and I decided that was the time to eat some of my candy. It was pretty good, and I closed it back up and hid it again. This wasn't a spot I'd ever hidden anything before. My brother and mom came back into the room and I was already laying and reading something. We went to sleep and my mom shut the lights off. I remember thinking the aftertaste of the candy really made me wish I had water, but not enough to go get any. The next morning I grabbed the candy from the closet before I went to school and the candy was completely new. Uneaten, unopened packaging. It was in the same spot and everything. It was a box of Nerds or something, so you'd know if it had been opened. But it was brand new. Never understood what happened here. I even asked my mom if she'd replaced it and she said no. Redditor 84, once I checked the refrigerator 5 minutes after the last time I checked it and, behold, there was a fresh new snack there for me. Redditor 85, after 500 or so instances in memory, character generation just starts crapping out and you can see repeats. Redditor 86, the missing Malaysian aircraft was the 404th Boeing 777 produced. Redditor 87, Neil Tyson said that? Doesn't he make fun of people who believe in creationism? How is that different lol? Redditor 88, I constantly have confirmation bias that the world molds around me depending on my interests. It's small stuff, but it sometimes make me wonder. Unexpectedly find a really interested TV show? The next season comes out within weeks of finishing it. This has happened multiple times. Get really interested in Legos after not thinking about them since childhood? Suddenly all of the sets I want are on clearance. I start thinking about wanting a pet. One of my friends suddenly needs help fostering 3 ferrets. It sometimes feels too coincidental. Redditor 89, I went camping this weekend, and when I went to bed, I was hugging my pillow, but when I woke up it was outside of the tent in the dirt. Redditor 90, I know nothing about American football, and don't care. Years ago, at work, I was invited as a joke and to take my money I'm sure to participate in the office football pool. I don't even remember how to play in the pool. Something maybe about points and which team won each week? I would make my choices guesses and win almost every time, which always surprised the guys. Then at the end of the season I was the winner of the jackpot. Which freaked them all out, including me. They asked me how I did it and I had no idea. How can you be lucky almost every time for a whole season? I didn't even know what I was doing. It was unnatural. Redditor 91, what Neil deGrasse Tyson believes is pretty much irrelevant if he doesn't bring proof for his claim. Redditor 92, one that I experienced recently is probably really boring in comparison to everyone else's, but I still consider it to be a glitch. Last week I was watching a YouTube video about an American sniper that they call the Reaper. Throughout the video he just breaks down sniper scenes from popular movies. When I first watched it I remember the video quality being of high production white background behind him, high quality voice recording, and excellent lighting. A few days after I watched it, I went back and rewatched it. But this time, the quality was considerably worse. This time he appears to be at home recording himself breaking down the scenes. Everything is considerably worse. The quality went from a high budget to a home video. In the beginning he even sets up the camera before talking and says good to go? A scene which I swear on my life I do not remember seeing before. At first I thought I was watching a different video of the same concept, but no. I was hanging on every word because I already knew what he was going to say next. Pretty underwhelming glitch, but a glitch nonetheless. Redditor 93, one this happened to my grandpa. It was a rainy night and he was riding his bicycle. When he came up to a certain bridge weird shit happens there. He suddenly ended up on the other side left, repeat, right in a blink of an eye. 2 I always have these visions and then they would happen hours, days, weeks, or months later. It's not like I see them in a dream or I space out. I just see them. I often find myself in situations like hole up I saw this as if it didn't happen countless times already. Redditor 94, it's not the craziest story ever, but back in winter, I showed up to work wearing my jacket, took it off, and hung it up with my stuff. Couple hours later my coworker leaves, and about 5 minutes after that, I notice my jacket is gone. So I call him up and say, "Did you take my jacket?" He said no, but I remember seeing it there. Every other coworker of mine confirmed seeing me wearing it to work that day. It wasn't until I got back home, and closed my front door, that I found my jacket hanging on the wall behind the door. I still have no idea if I had it or not. Redditor 95, I believe I've told this story before. I'm 41 now, for reference. When I was a kid, I had a girl cousin who was about 6 months older than me, and we were playing together one time with all of her dolls set up on chairs in front of my bed, and a standing jumping playing on my bed as though it was a stage and her dolls were our audience. At one point, I swear to everything holy and unholy that her kid sister doll blinked. To the best of my knowledge, kid sister wasn't the kind of doll with movable eyelids, so it was a little jarring. I stopped. And my cousin also stopped. We looked at each other, wide-eyed, and both said, "Did you see that?" So I know it wasn't a case of one of us making something up and the other just playing along believing the other's story. We both saw it, and we both stopped dead in our tracks at the same time. We ran out of the room and told my mom, who I'm sure just thought we were making something up so she didn't bother investigating. But I've never forgotten that day. I should drop my cousin a line and see if she remembers that incident. Either it was a glitch in the Matrix, or Toy Story is real. Yo. Redditor 96, as a kid, I spent the night at a friend's house. We had the same dream, interacted and everything. We talked about it that morning, it was wild. We still talk about it. Redditor 97, I had dreams of my car accident and injuries for years prior to the accident. Since I've been a child I always felt my right knee was going to get destroyed at some point. The dreams of the car accident started in my 20s a few years before it happened. Redditor 98, our glitch in the Matrix. Redditor 99, I go into this like psychosis mode every few years that only last a few minutes, but I just continuously think about how nothing is real and we're all in a game or something to that effect. I also get a lot of deja vu. Redditor 100, dude, if this is a fucking sim I'm going to be fucking pissed. Redditor 101, after reading Simulacron 3, I'm convinced that the surest way to know that we are in a simulation would be that we have created a simulated universe. Without a simulated universe within our simulation, it would be incomplete. Redditor 102, if this counts, but I would have a dream of me chilling with the boys and we are all laughing, then I would wake up and think nothing of it. Then like 3 months later I would have the same exact interaction in the same place talking about the same thing. I have even had a dream about playing Overwatch competitive and mid-game like weeks later just know what was gonna happen because of deja vu. Redditor 103, I had 4 years of unbelievably incredibly good luck, and then another few years of incredibly terrible luck. I am talking getting into the college of choice, amazing family and friends, great internship opportunities, altogether amazing life, then, 2 concussions, a hormonal imbalance, a broken shoulder and leg separate occasions, and viral meningitis. Redditor 104, quantum superposition might be a way for the simulation to save computing power. It doesn't compute an object's real state until it is actually observed. Redditor 105, I dropped a DS stylus once only for it to flat out disappear. I tore the entire room apart to find it was just gone. Redditor 106, the COVID crisis is like a lot of updates, it slows the computer down and lasts way too long. Redditor 107, I was in my aunt's house playing with a small, toy cop car. My aunt was taking care of a neighbor's baby at the time, so I was just drifting this toy car all over the stroller until it fell somewhere in the stroller. I seriously could not find this car for hours and got so pissed that it could just disappear like that. My mom comes from work to pick me up, and as she enters the door, she hands me the same cop car that she says I must have forgotten in her purse. To this day, she can't explain either. Redditor 108, I think ghosts may be the strongest indicator of a glitch. Some part of the program that was supposed to end is caught in a loop, usually nothing important, so maybe the programmer forgot or didn't care about it. Redditor 109, you know how you get an echo when you're on your cell phone occasionally? Satellite delay, etc. I once was trying to think of a phrase and it wouldn't come to me. I heard the echo before I said it. I was talking to my dad and thought it was him. Then I realized that he didn't know the phrase. I literally heard it in my ear and said, yeah, that's right. I know it's just misfiled memory, but I remember it as it happened because I said out loud that I just heard myself talk before I spoke. Maybe it was a micro seizure or something like that, but it was really weird. Redditor 110, my best mate and I had something strange happen that we can't explain. We left for a trip, just him and I at 4 a.m., heading hunting for a weekend. The trip to the property is a good 3.5 to 4 hours with no traffic. We drove along without noticing that it wasn't getting any lighter as it would with the sun starting to rise. We turned up at the property just as glow started on the horizon. Checked the time and it was 5:45 am. Neither of us to this day can explain how we did a trip that should take 3.54 hours in 1 hour 45 minutes. Redditor 111, not as long or exciting as some of the other comments, but once in my early teens I was getting into bed, looked at the alarm clock which said 923, blinked, it now said 246. I wasn't lying down, I was still propped up on my elbow to see the clock, and in no way did I feel like slept. I don't know, it was just really weird. Redditor 112, there was a time that I went to make a bowl of cereal. Get out the bowl. Turn around. Walk 10 feet to the pantry. Turn to the left. Get the milk from the fridge. Turn left again to go back to the bowl. Pour in contents. Turn to get a spoon. Look at bowl. Bowl is gone. Get new bowl from pantry. Bowl from pantry already has cereal and milk in it. Spills all over me. That was 4 years ago and I still don't have an explanation. Redditor 113, my parents and me had been somewhere, came home and the door of the guest bathroom was locked from the inside, key sitting in it on the inside and all. Window was closed, nothing out of position or anything. Was a simple lock using the same keys as other doors inside the house, so I managed to push out the key with a little Lego spear and open it with another key. But yeah, an empty room locked from the inside. Key stuck in the lock also on the inside. Very strange. Redditor 114, a lot of the times I'll get lost in my thoughts and think of the most random things like bits of trivia, how to do certain tasks, events that happened to me years prior, etc. I've found lately, however, that I'll think these things and then later on in the day, I'll be having a conversation and what I was thinking earlier would randomly come up. It's almost like my brain can predict what's gonna come up in conversation hours later and prepare for it. Redditor 115, it's around Easter time. I'm out having dinner with 2 friends. My nan calls me, we have a sweet conversation. She asks how I'm doing, tells me to take care of myself, asks if I'm still dating that boy. All in all we talk for about 5 minutes or so. Suddenly she starts repeating herself, asks me how I'm doing, tells me to take care of myself, asks if I'm still dating that boy, etc. The whole conversation just plays out again, but I don't pay much attention and just think it's her being a good nan and trying to figure out if I'm genuinely doing okay, at which point she starts again, asks me how I'm doing, tells me to take care of myself, asks if I'm still dating that boy, etc. This time I'm weirded out. I realize everything is exactly the same. She isn't asking again differently, it's the same tone of voice, the exact same words, the same amount of silence between the questions. I say nothing. I just listen. My nan's side of the conversation keeps repeating itself until I give up and hang up, and return to my friends, thinking there must be something wrong with the phones. I call her the next day and say, oh sorry, didn't mean to be rude yesterday, think we got cut off. She says our conversation was normal and we said goodbye after what was the first iteration for me, and she didn't realize I was wanting to say anything else too. I'm at home with mom, we're waiting for it to be 4 o'clock so we can get ready and go visit my aunt. So we're constantly checking the time and we have a clock on the wall opposite the sofa we're sat on having our tea, so it's nice and easy to keep track. We both look at the clock for the umpteenth time and for a second just stare at it, realizing something is wrong with it just now, but not being able to put our finger on it. Then it hits us, it's suddenly going backwards. My mom gets goosebumps. I get up to go give it a good smack or something as soon as I hold my hand out to get it off the wall. It starts working normally. We check our phones and it's the correct time. 3. I'm in my early teens and I have a vivid dream where I'm in what seems to be a country house, and I'm laying on this bed staring at a net curtain for some reason. This remains fresh in my memory, and for days on end I keep thinking back to the pattern on the net curtain. A week later I go to a birthday party in the countryside with my mom. We have a good time, we dance, I've had enough of her super chatty, now wine-powered, friends, and head inside the house where I am told I can see the new kittens. I make my way into a bedroom, and plop myself on a bed for a minute, disappointed about not finding them, only to see the damned net curtain. Freaked me out. Redditor 116. Just an hour ago actually. I opened a bottle of Coca-Cola, drank it and set it down. I left the bottle open for ease of use. A minute or two later the bottle jumps in the air and fizzes like I just shook it and put a Mento in it. Still have no clue how it happened. It ruined my grilled cheese too. Redditor 117. I've actually had a few. One of them was actually shared by a friend. We saw the light from a streetlight once with no streetlight there. The streetlights cast this downward cone of light. And we saw the cone of light with nothing to cast it. The friend actually leaned way over and looked straight up through the windshield of the car to see if he could figure out what caused that. He could not. Kind of a mystery. Redditor 118. One time in high school, I found my locker lock in the small hand compartment to the side of the car door as I was leaving the car to get into my school. I usually forget to bring my locker lock, so I didn't think much of it and picked it up and brought it with me. Well, later that day I go to the gym lockers to change clothes, and lo and behold, my locker lock is already there. I checked my bag for the lock I picked up earlier, and it's there too. I tried unlocking both locks using my combination, and they both opened with the exact same combination. Since I have never reprogrammed a lock in my life, and no one in my family has done so either, I must just have spawned an item copy and somehow. Don't ask me to do it again. Redditor 119. That random thing that just disappears. Redditor 120. 1. I was playing a game one time, don't remember the title, and I felt as if I played it before. 2. Was looking at a magazine and saw an ad for women's perfume. The ad had 2 women in a limo. Had the feeling that I somehow knew them. The women were unfamiliar to me, but I just got the impression that I knew them and everything about them. 3. My brother once had a Genesis CD and one of the songs on it was Jesus He Knows Me. I never heard the song before, but when the song started playing, I sang it from beginning to end. The same for the cartoons Animaniacs and Tiny Toon Adventures. The very day that they aired I was singing along with the opening lyrics. My parents said that I must have seen the shows before, but that would be impossible because it was the very first time I saw the shows and they were both the pilot episodes. Redditor 121. To preface this, I had some fairly major surgery about 2 years ago, and while the chance of survival was pretty high, I had always been massively unlucky. Right after the surgery, everything was going great. A little too great, actually. Mostly just general karma was flowing my way. But the kicker that tripped me up was that whenever I'd toss trash into the basket, it always went in. For 6 months, I couldn't miss. There would be times where I felt whatever I was throwing leave my hands and think, oh crap, that's going to completely whiff, and swish, it'd go right in. It wasn't until I actually made my worry audible that I finally started missing again. Redditor 122. I live in a small town in Canada. It's heavily forested and has lots of ravines and hills in my particular neighborhood. I was biking northwards up a hill one day. The road I was on is bordered by a huge dense forest, with chain-link fences and ravines in it. The road at the top of the hill, which is the one I was going to, is the only road that allows you to travel east. Beside me as I was biking up, I noticed some woman with long black hair, and one of those tiny white dogs, probably a terrier or something like that. As I was on a bike, I got to the top of the hill way before her, and I could see her following me up towards the top of the hill road. I turned right and went down the top of the hill road. As you go down that road, there's a petrol station and small plaza of sorts with some shops and a supermarket. The only way to access it is via the road I was just going down, unless you manage to get through the dense forest and ravine, which is near impossible, even more so with a dog. But to my surprise, I passed by the petrol station and saw the woman with the dog. She didn't pass me, she didn't get in a car it looked like. No cars were in the petrol station parking lot with her. Still unknown who she is and how the duck she got there so fast. I never saw her again. Redditor 123, seeing the same exact house as my now late uncle's house, who lived in a different state. And this house was literally exactly the same. Same color, same shape, even the yard with a shed and things in the backyard were exactly the same. In the same exact place. If I hadn't been walking with my mom when we saw it, I might have thought I was imagining things, but she saw the house and commented on it. And it was very real. We passed by it as we were walking, real grass, real fence, everything. Fucking weird. Redditor 124, there was a social building with games etc. for an after-school program. I have never been to it, but they had a grand opening BC that completely remodeled it, so I decided to go. As soon as I walked in I knew I've been there before. This was impossible as it was fully redone and I never went to the older version anyways. But it was even more odd. I looked to my friends that went with and said down the hall is a waiting room and I know I've seen it before. There is even something gross behind the red chair. We walked down to it and sure enough a waiting room with a red chair and a tampon on the floor. They all just said I'm joking and walked through earlier. But I hadn't. I'll never forget that day and that feeling. Redditor 125, I'm a skeptical person. I don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural. That's why I rarely tell anyone of this, since acknowledging that this happened means I have to accept that there are inexplicable phenomena. I was in the lab that I was employed at the time. I was working late, but not that late. There were still a few coworkers around. An old man walked into the room and gave me a small wave and a smile. I'd never seen him around, and I knew he couldn't be working in my department since I'd met everyone. He looked like an older professor wearing an older version of the modern white lab coat, personalized, with a name tag and pens in his pockets. I didn't see his name. At this point I rather assumed he was visiting his old workplace. After acknowledging my presence he turns and walks into a small room in front of my desk. It was just an ordinary machine room with a few cupboards. There was no other exit. After half a minute or so I had to go into the room too, to get my samples. As I enter the room he's not there. There was no way for him to leave the room without passing immediately in front of me. I was surprised, and then very uncomfortable. I'm still uncomfortable thinking about the entire thing. Who was he? Did I make him up? Did I black out and miss him leaving? Or did I hallucinate in a very specific way? There are experiments showing that you can induce hallucinations by exposing the brain to certain vibrations and inaudible sounds. Is that what happened? And in that case, why did it only happen once, and only to me? I asked around, and there was no one visiting that day. I still keep a lookout for that old man, hoping I see him one day and can at least explain that part of the event. Oh, and I get huge déjà vus where I know what will happen and what people will say for several minutes ahead. I haven't told anyone as it makes me sound crazy. Redditor 126, I've posted this before, but here you go. This happened about a week ago. At about 6 p.m., my smoke alarm started beeping loudly for about 10 seconds. I had also just moved into this house about a week before and had not had a problem with the smoke alarm before this. I didn't immediately know which smoke alarm the noise was coming from since I was in my room with my door shut. The same thing happened again about 2 hours later that night. I checked the other smoke alarms and figured out that they were wired and did not take batteries. I had thought it was just because the battery was low, but that obviously wasn't the problem. The alarm continued to go off throughout the night. My ceiling is about 16 feet in the air, so there was no way for me to reach it and turn it off. The next morning, I contacted my landlord, who was also the original owner of the house. He brought a ladder and fixed the alarm. He said that the smoke alarms in the house had never had a problem for all the time he had lived here. When I asked him what was wrong with it, he said he had no idea. Then he told me that the night before, at about 6 p.m., he had started smelling smoke. There was no smoke in or near his house at the time. He said he had smelled it all night and felt like something was wrong, but he didn't know what. He knew immediately after I texted him that the two things were somehow connected. This definitely isn't the craziest thing ever, but it's definitely weird and the first glitch that I have been involved in. Redditor 127. I parked next to a motorcycle that was not in a parking spot at the farmer's market. Went in, came back to my car, and the motorcycle, yes, the exact same one, was now parked in a different row. Same placement in the yellow lines marking the end of a row, still not in a spot, but in a different row. There would have been no point moving it, BC it still wasn't in a spot and it wasn't any closer to the venue. Or maybe it was my car that was moved. Honestly, I'm still confused. Redditor 128. When things fall or fly across the room and land or stick without a bounce or wiggle of any sort. Redditor 129. Little things like seeing a white large truck fly past my window as a kid clear as day with no tracks to speak of, seeing lights flash suddenly with nothing to reflect from. Placing something down and swearing that's where I left it only for it to be moved. Dreaming of things happening months before they happen and having deja vu. Redditor 130. I was operating a stand-up forklift. The controls malfunctioned and it pushed into some racking. A lateral came into where I was standing and was squishing me. I blacked out, and when I came to, I was standing in the aisle, and the forklift was all the way under the racking. The exit was facing toward the racking, so I have no idea how I got out, but I had 3 cracked ribs. Redditor 131. When I was about 7 or 8, my dad took me RV camping. When we were going to the campsite, I was sitting in the front seat. When I just blacked out, I didn't remember falling asleep, and when I woke up it was night and I was in the same position as I was when I was awake, and when I asked my dad what happened, he just said I fell asleep. Redditor 132. I've had deja vu before. On the same place in the same circumstances with the same person at the same angle 3 times in 2 different years. Redditor 133. I once went to another restaurant to have lunch. My regular place was in a warehouse. I needed to buy something, so I went to the warehouse. Then the biggest doorway effect happened. Standing there, I was thinking, why did I go here? Oh right. Lunch, of course. So, I had lunch. The second after I left the warehouse, I suddenly realized what I had done. So shocked, only several days later I remembered what I was supposed to buy. Redditor 134. I think this just me, but my brain just stops functioning temporarily. Like I put a bag of flour in the fridge and I left out a box of frozen waffles in a bag for 5 minutes for no reason. Redditor 135. The illusion of free will. People do strange things all the time as if driven by some external force and they can't really give a good answer why. Redditor 136. I had an orgasm once that bent space-time. Redditor 137. I had a binder with notes college. While going through them, I accidentally pulled at a page and one of the holes was out the ring. The rings were closed and I didn't pull it upwards, yet, somehow, the page wasn't torn. It still puzzles me to this day. Redditor 138. Neil deGrasse Tyson is also a creepy weirdo who has an ego the size of the sun. Who cares about his opinion? Redditor 139. People talking about the simulation theory remind me of historical tales about the time people thought the Earth is the center of the universe. Being inside a simulation doesn't mean everything was built just for us humans. It is more likely it's a simulation of the universe. Redditor 140. Once while taking a bus back from school, I saw a bottle of water just chilling in the air, 6 meters from the ground, stopped like some bugged animation. I don't know about you guys, but things like this gives me hope that there is something beyond this boring world. Redditor 141. When I was maybe 12 years old, I found a CD I didn't own in my CD player. The player I had had since new, and no one else used, it was in my room. The CD was one of those blank writable ones that someone had recorded music on too, and not music that I knew. There was nothing written on it. None of my family recognized it, no explanation. Redditor 142. Silverware constantly disappearing. My family has bought about 3 new sets of spoons in the last 5 or so years. All but 3 of our steak knives are gone. Same thing with clothes. This one pair of pants recently went completely missing that I used to wear all the time. Nowhere in the house to be found. Never left the dryer after I put it in that night. Also missing a book I got a signature on. Missing a necklace. Missing a dozen stuffed animals. Missing a random shoe. Missing my old phone. Missing some video game discs I haven't played in years. I'm not a messy person and I don't live in a mansion. Someone explain. Redditor 143. It snowed. In May. Redditor 144. Okay, well, I know that this seems to happen to a lot of people, but at my school we had a gifted program for the smart kids, and we were at an assembly when they asked out of the whole school which kids were in the gifted program, and so we all raised our hands, and then right after they asked to raise your hand if you had dreams where they happened in real life after you dreamed it, and the weirdest thing is that every single one of the kids with their hand up kept their hands up, no hands were dropped or raised, and I still don't know how to explain it to this day. Redditor 145. How do you even start if it's a simulation? If you believe this crap, how are you not a God believer like me? Y'all are full of baloney. Edit. Sorry if I offended anybody by this post. Believe what you want to believe. Redditor 146. Every time you cross a street on foot, a car is waiting for you and you know they're impatient. Every time. Redditor 147. All my classes cancelled for different reasons same day as I needed a procedure done. Around the same time I drove on my regular route and there was a skylight that was following my exact route. Redditor 148. So I'm a night owl. That night my father came asking me what am I doing still awake at 5:30 a.m. I looked at the clock and it was 3:30 a.m. and I was like, it's not even close to 5:30. He left the room and after a few seconds he came back and said, then what's the time? I said 3:30. As I looked at the clock again it was 5:30. I was confused and just went to sleep. Redditor 149. Most of the time my deja vu comes from seeing it in a dream before. Usually it's anywhere from 6 months to a few years after I have the dream. But I can't figure out why or shake the feeling. I'll even see people that I'll meet before I meet them. But their faces are blurred out. Only the general aura and situation is the same. Then I'll relive it. Weird. I hate it mostly because I don't understand it. Redditor 150. My whole life random people have walked up to me and said something like hi Christine or Christine. It even happened when I was in another state. Edit. My name is not Christine, but my mom told me once that she wanted to name me Christine but my dad didn't. So maybe in the other timeline I was named Christine? Redditor 151. One time my sister and I were in the car and the moon was suddenly huge, like absolutely massive, taking over the sky kind of thing. We got to the restaurant where we were going and no one else had seen it.